So welcome to this 90-day turnaround for a new marketing leader. So new could be you've just started a new job, you've just had a promotion, or you're just in a position where the business needs a bit of a turnaround. What we're going to boil down here is 4 of the quickest and longest term strategies that we know as an agency. We've worked with hundreds of B2B clients, hundreds of new CMOs, and we try to boil down the ones that are consistently a success. And by success, I mean they show impact in the short term, but those activities compound into the medium and the long term. Because if everything is focused on quick wins, which often is the case, what a new CMO wants to do to prove value, what happens is those quick wins run out of steam after a while. And then so the medium and the long term, when those things haven't been built or been getting any momentum, we see people stall. So I'm going to focus on strategies that have impact across the short, medium, and long term. It's important because the CMO tenure is now on average 40 months. It's the shortest of any of the executive team. So you barely have 9 minutes before you're expected to show results. And it's a paradox, right? Because you've probably been brought in to develop a long-term plan and define success, but you are going to be chased for revenue pretty quick. It's just the realities of what's going on there. So who are we? We are Somebody Digital. We're an award-winning global B2B marketing agency. And as I say, worked with hundreds of clients, hundreds of new CMOs, and tried to boil down those things that actually work and have an impact. So the first thing that is really important, this isn't one of the strategies, it's just something to be aware of, because I see people not asking this question. It's why did your predecessor leave, get fired, chose to leave, whatever the thing is? Because a 2025 Gartner study said that 69% of CEOs and CFOs would terminate their CMO for the inability to deliver promised results. What's not clear in that is what promised results mean. Is it a pipeline problem? Was it an ROI problem? Was it a confidence problem? They just weren't having the buy-in of the board in meetings? Was it a scale problem that as a CMO they weren't able to build the team needed to do that? So I think developing that understanding of what happened before is going to make a huge difference to your business, because we've worked with clients where we were the incumbent agency, a new CMO came in who had big visions of needing to update the brand and the website and all these things, but we know that the predecessor left because they weren't able to show the ability to build the team to manage this and do it forward. And there was just a real blind spot towards that. So I think it's an incredibly important thing to do to, when you first start, know why the predecessor left, because that's going to let you know, okay, that has got to be one of the priorities that I communicate early on when you're speaking with someone. So what I'm presenting here is the map versus the shortcut. What this is part of what we would call our evolution framework as an agency. Now I'm going to send this to you at the end so you can look at this in your own time. And this is a kind of from ground up to execution, how we as an agency and you as CMO can think about building a really robust marketing strategy, team, execution, measurement framework. But I'm not going to go through all this today, but because what I want to go through is the ones that are going to have the biggest impact. This is great if you have the time, the budget, and the patience to methodically go through it. But this is not going to give you that impact in the first 90 days, which are incredibly important. But I will share this. You can go through it in your own time, but I'm going to focus on 4 things that will have an impact straight away. So the first is get much more from the traffic you already have. If I had to boil down everything into one strategy that has the biggest impact, it's conversion rate optimization. It's getting more from what you already have, because so often when new CMOs get more budget, it's about what new channels can we do, how can we expand. But if you just look at the traffic you already get, if you're able to get a lift in conversion rate from that, if you're spending huge amounts on paid media, it would have a huge impact on your business. It's often easier to do, and it doesn't require more budget for you to be able to do it. If you double the conversion rate from 2% to 4% from existing traffic, which you would hope would be kind of somewhat higher quality, that is not a particularly difficult job to do. If you have the time and the testing strategies in place, you can actually do that. If you try to just double your business by doubling the traffic, in so many instances, that would just simply be impossible. Either the traffic isn't there or you're maxed out. So if you think about it that way, it's a great way to think, okay, this is something I can go in to do straight away and be able to do that. So as a initial strategy, get with your team, look at all the key landing pages, the key marketing material, everything that you're doing. Testing is way more than moving buttons around on a website. It can be funnel optimization, email, messaging, handoff between sales and marketing. So there are so many places that you can optimize, but this is one of the strategies that I would say straight away is going to have the biggest impact of into your business. What you'll often find though is, especially in B2B companies, big ones as well, if you have a test idea, it often has to go through brand and tech and fun. Just it has to go through so many people. I suggest getting a tool in place like Web Trends Optimize, VWO, something that you can have one line of code on your site. You can make changes really fast. You can get something that wins. You can then show it to the rest of the business, but then you have a business case of why you want to actually do something rather than going through all these levels of approval and things. And something that you could have tested and got a result in 2 weeks has taken 3 months just to get some approval. So that's just a little tip that we would suggest there. So let's look at what this can actually mean for a business. So in the example here, you can see that there's a conversion rate of 2.5%. If nothing else changed, I mean, these are all fictional numbers, but just to give you an idea, if nothing else changed but the conversion rate, and we lifted that from 2.5 to 3%, on this example, that would add 2.4 million to the bottom line of the business. So it does not take much if everything else remained the same, especially if you are working with reduced budgets or the same budgets. You can see how this is one of the levers that you have, and there's almost always opportunities, especially on often dull B2B sites, to get that actual lift. So the next one, measure and report to revenue even before you can. So what I mean by this is, we all know, you see it on LinkedIn, we all just know that it's not about volume anymore. It's about quality. We know the MQL is dead and you should be measuring to revenue. Everybody knows this. They will tell you this if you're having a chat with them or you meet them at a networking event. The reality of what we see with so many clients is this is not happening. So although we know that, and probably you purport it when you're speaking to your friends, still people are measuring to MQLs because that's what marketing's often measured on. It's volume of MQLs. But what's really difficult there is it just creates this real misalignment with sales and marketing, and you can't do a better job. So what the important job to do straight away is to learn to measure or start to measure as deep as possible as you can. So from MQL to SQL to close one sale to actually revenue on the other side. The reason this is so important, one, it's going to get you buy-in from the board straight away that you can do that. And a little tip that I would kind of give here, I think I've got my next slide. So let's say you had a very simple dashboard like this showing you the different steps. Most boards I know don't have a nice visual like this, and they would absolutely love it. They would love to see the flow through of business going through all the various levels. And you can slice and dice this by campaign, location, all the different ways. But having some visual like this can really calm a board down. So a little tip I've got here is, even if you don't have all the numbers yet, let's say you're just measuring to SQL, you've not managed to pull through revenue yet, because that's going to take a little bit of time. Still include it on all your reports, but have it grayed out and say to be confirmed or something like that, so they can at least see you're trying to get to that point. That is, it buys you a lot of time and it also builds a lot of confidence. So the other reason that it's incredibly important, one, it gets buy-in. Two, it gets you and marketing, the marketing and sales working to the same people. So you're not just sending volume of leads and sales saying all these leads are crap and they stop checking them. What it's doing is, because you're measuring to marketing, to revenue, you are going to then start to probably put less leads through the system, but a much higher quality. So it gets you that buy-in. By measuring deeper as well, this is slightly more advanced. What you can then start to do is use that data to enrich your front end marketing. So if you see from your paid media activity, which of those leads become MQLs, then become SQLs, and then become closed won business, you'll start to see a drop off. And you might say, actually, the people that actually become closed won business, they're actually filling these criteria. They're coming from a different channel to where the MQLs are coming from, or something like that. You can then pass that data back up to the paid media team so they can start to front end optimize for those that are more likely to become closed won. And that enrichment process, especially in B2B, is incredibly important, incredibly valuable. So measure and report to revenue even before you can, gets a lot of buy-in from the board. It gets a lot of alignment between sales and marketing, and allows you to do so much better optimization to reduce cost per leads when you actually start to enrich that data and pass it up to the marketing team. So the final one is, we would say, using creative as a performance lever. So in B2B in particular, creative is one of the most under optimized things that you've got. If conversion rate optimization is the biggest opportunity, creative is the second. You might be spending, or we see clients spending hundreds of thousands or sometimes millions on paid media and expansion, all this stuff, and the creative is just, it's crap. It is uninspiring. It's not speaking to their audience, especially if you're in B2B, right? Let's not deny that if you're selling a complex solution, you're probably going to be marketing to between 6 and 10 different people. Is your creative speaking to that specific person? Is a creative then reflective of the landing page that they're going to? Is that creative a really compelling value proposition to your business, and is that being communicated on there? It is a real creative crisis in B2B, and in an industry that's obsessed with data and rational arguments, creativity is a real competitive weapon that you've got. Again, it's not going to take more budget to be able to do that. If you just look at your creatives, look at who you're targeting and say, okay, is this creative really speaking to the people that we want to speak to? And create content that does. And then, are the places that we're sending them to, is that messaging consistent? Are we offering assets when they go to those pages that are in line with where that person is? If it's a real kind of top of funnel piece of content and you're sending them to a demo form, is that truly what somebody's going to be doing at that point? So is your creative being reflective of where you're sending those people to? So it is a huge opportunity, especially in B2B. And also, in an AI era, this is not just about converting and optimization. AI now sees your online presence as an entity. When it looks at your business, it's also looking at your social media, it's looking at your ads, it's looking at the mentions in other places. If that is inconsistent, if you're saying different things and the message is inconsistent, it's hard for it to know specifically what you do. And if it's a bit confusing and your competitor is not confusing, then it's way more likely to choose your competitor. So as a reason to take this to the board, or just another reason to look at your creative, is because AI is looking at your business and it's looking at all these things as well. So by optimizing that, you're going to do a much better job of getting more from the traffic you're already getting, but it's also going to help you surface within the LLMs a lot better as well. Okay, so your next 90 days, the 3 opportunities I showed you here are things that I see across multiple clients. It doesn't matter who they're going against, but particularly in B2B, things where there is always an opportunity, because they're things that in B2B in particular are just underlooked at. There's so much obsession with ROI and pushing and doing more, that these kind of fine tuning and getting more from your traffic you're already getting is always the big opportunities. But also take the evolution framework that I'm going to be sharing with you as well. And when you have the time and the capacity, that is something to really look through and say, okay, are we doing all these different steps? It starts the foundation and works across. So it's not the 3 major ideas here are not instead of taking that methodical bottom-up approach when you start a new business, but it is a great way of systematically working through it while looking at those opportunities that I shared, where you can start to get those quick wins that are going to compound over time. So thank you for listening.